Hey everyone, I'm back, and as I'm making this video, there's currently the Niners versus Lions game going on, and while I want to make a joke, talking about the current state of football, it would just be summed up to me talking about how two football teams are blowing it worse than your average adult film star. But for today's video, we're not going to talk about sports. You see the title, you've seen the drama if you've been on the internet for the past week. We got to talk about Nicki Minaj, and see, when it comes to being in the hip-hop industry, I feel like one of the things you kind of gotta have is an absolutely ginormous ego that nobody can control, and not even yourself. I feel like Nicki Minaj, especially as of recently, has kind of became the leading figure of that, because as I said before, she's been in the light for some more drama, this time surrounding the same person that she's had beef with for a while now, Megan Thee Stallion, who is another female hip-hop artist, in which, she basically went on a bunch of long-winded rants on like TikTok and Twitter, like somebody who's chronically online and doesn't have a job, except that Nicki does have a job and it's being a loser. I mean, it's kind of like a common theme with Nicki Minaj, I feel like she's like the 50 Cent of like female hip-hop artists, anytime there is some new talent within the women hip-hop scene, it feels as if she's always the first one front and center to be their biggest hater. Why? I don't know. I mean, we're talking from Cardi B to Azalea Banks to Iggy Azalea to Remy Ma to now Megan Thee Stallion. She has had a ample number of beefs with multiple female hip-hop artists, whether you like them or not, and a lot of the times it feels as if it was just either based purely in envy or some sort of spite. It feels more like it's a lot deeper than whatever meets the surface, especially when you have people such as Lotto, for example, who actually held Nicki Minaj to a much higher standard and had a lot of respect for her as an inspiration for women in hip-hop. But of course, it's as the saying goes, you never meet your idols, right? I think the only beef out of all of this that doesn't really surprise me is the Azalea Banks beef, because if you know Azalea Banks, you already know she's just a little bit insane, and I think she has problems with just about everybody, including her own fan base, but at least her music is good. But I think just what makes the whole Meg Thee Stallion getting in a beef with Nicki Minaj thing just as problematic as it is in comparison to most other rap beef is the already full plate that Megan Thee Stallion has already. One, with her getting cheated on by her longtime partner. Two, with her also getting shot by Tory Lanez and the whole court drama that followed it. And then also adding the fact of the long-standing misogyny and just the whole toxic masculinity that's just so deeply layered within hip-hop and hip-hop culture that I feel like can be discouraging for a lot of female rappers, and I feel like can be very demeaning to a lot of female rappers, including Megan Thee Stallion. And when you got people like Nicki Minaj, who I feel is supposed to be a more positive example for women in rap, she has instead, taken the case of being the bad apple that has spoiled the bunch, which I feel like does absolutely no justice for herself or any other woman in hip-hop. And it's like, I get it, right? In the hip-hop industry, in hip-hop history in general, when it comes to women in hip-hop, it's like a dog-eat-dog world, right? It's a glass ceiling for a lot of women in hip-hop. It's very hard to really get a leg up, because in an industry that is dominated by men and heavily caters towards the male gaze and all the extra stuff in between, it's very hard to get a leg up if you're not like heavily showing yourself in a sexual fashion, you know what I mean? Especially with how a lot of these music execs tend to direct things, But I think the problem comes with Nicki Minaj in this point is the fact that to go from being touted as one of the more respected female hip-hop acts of honestly all time to now doubling down to marrying her and burning bridges with damn near every upcoming female act within the industry, it's truly incredible. It really is incredible how somebody can really do that to themselves. And then, it's like, even notoriety aside, right? You can also just take the fact that in terms of her musical quality, that's also dropped as well. I think that's pretty clear. A lot of her music nowadays just feels very formulaic and more like radio pop. It's not nothing that would actually stick with me, which I feel like that was kind of like her downfall, was when she dropped Queen. Because if you remember around that time when that album dropped as well, Astroworld also dropped at the same time. And of course, Astroworld got #1. And Queen got #2, which, #2 isn't bad. It is what it is. not everybody's gonna be the top dog. That's just how life goes, right? Of course, Nicki Minaj did take to social media to be very vocal about how she felt about the fact that she was not number one, and instead wanted to just shit on Travis and his kid, because I guess she just thought that was a tactic used to get Astroworld to number one, completely disregarding the work that Travis did put in to even get in that position. You know, which I feel like is just once again, another example of her envy and her desperation to stay relevant, completely screwing up the kind of reputation that she could have had if, you know, she just wasn't a dick, you know? She could have just taken the route that damn near every other rapper from her era, you know, like the Young Money era did take, you know, such as like Drake and Wayne himself, using her overly dedicated following to be able to help garner more attention towards young female acts, be able to give more cosigns, and, you know, be able to really work things from behind the scenes to be able to actually help female hip-hop have such a stronger grip within the industry, instead of playing into this weird internalized misogyny bullshit that I feel like just fucks with everything. Like, this only makes things worse, not just for Nicki Minaj, but just for women in hip-hop in general, because it divides fan bases, it divides public perception, and the people that I feel never actually gave a shit to begin with are only given even more of a reason to never actually give a shit to begin with. You know what I mean? And never really pay attention to female talent, is simply because you have moments like this that's just filled with a bunch of nonsensical drama that just makes it feel as if, like, oh, female artists are just all drama. You know what I mean? Like, it's all just a bullshit reality show that's just made up just to keep them relevant, when in reality they are also artists, and they are also people who are going through real problems within this industry that will not be properly addressed as long as they are still stuck within this negative image. But I digress. And then it's just like, even talking about like her fan base, right? You know, she has a very dedicated fan base. I feel like the Barbs are like the true definition of people who do not have a life and do not have a job. They literally just doxed the producer who did the beat for Nicki Minaj's, I believe it's out now, her diss track that dropped today, or I believe it's dropping tomorrow. Just because he didn't clear the beat, because he's also cool with Megan Thee Stallion and he wants nothing to do with whatever problems they got going on. And I think everybody knows that Nicki Minaj is kind of a dick. The fact that he doesn't want to clear that beat, so now her insane ass, no job having ass fan base wants to dox said person, that is no job behavior. Dedicated though, dedicated to the craft, but that is truly no job behavior. With how dedicated the fan base is, the only thing I can really think about is just what's going on in their head throughout these past couple of years, while Nicki Minaj has kind of just been spiraling more and more and more into, honestly, just a complete sicko nut job. I feel like, how low can you set the bar for Nicki Minaj? You know what I mean? Of course, I think we all know about her husband. The guy is a let's not forget, he also did fail to register as a sex offender in the state of California. Let's also not forget the fact that she tried to intimidate and even bribe the victim. And then there's also the fact of how she tried to spread COVID misinformation by using and basically exposing her cousin getting STDs and saying that it was the vaccine that gave her cousin STDs. I can't stress enough to the people who are watching, COVID vaccines do not give you STDs. If that was the case, I would have been dead a long time ago. Hell, if that was the case, that means Magic Johnson probably had COVID, you know? I just don't know how low of a bar you can set for somebody whose moral standards already sit far below hell itself. It's truly incredible, and I can only think about what's going through the mind of your average Nicki Minaj stan. I mean, they probably don't give a shit. They're probably not as conflicted as you would think, because they've been so dedicated to the craft of having absolutely no life but thinking about Nicki Minaj, that now they're just in it to the end. You know what I mean? They're like Kanye stans. Oh yeah, Kanye is a Nazi, but like, you know, maybe Nazis aren't so bad. You know what I mean? That's how Nicki stans are right now. Yes, Nicki Minaj is a apologist and a truly sick person who has not only a husband but also a brother too. But I guess the conclusion I'm trying to make to this is the fact that, Nicki, if you're watching this, because I feel like you probably would, if you are, haha, I feel like Nicki Minaj needs to come with that realization that, like, the times are past passing her. You constantly picking fights does nothing for any positive outlook of female hip-hop. It does nothing for your own reputation. To put it in basketball terms, Nicki, you are actively losing your legacy points because you're just that much of a dick. You know, as for Megan Thee Stallion, I'm glad she's hasn't really said too much aside from, you know, her diss track that she made, in which not only did she call out Nicki Minaj, but she called out a lot of other people who might have said something about her. So, you know, it's good that she was vocal on that point and just left it at that, because I think the best way to beat people like Nicki Minaj is by just not doing anything at all. I'm going to sit here and laugh at the Detroit Lions while they blow it to the 49ers, and I'm also going to go to sleep crying because the Detroit Lions are blowing it to the 49ers. I hope you guys have a good night. Peace.
Well, now that that's over, let us all pray for Nicki to finally wrap it up, because the music was kinda ass anyways. But if you liked the video, feel free to subscribe as well, follow my IG and Twitter, and I'll see you guys next time when I also get into feuds with every person I come across online. Peace.